Hello, fellow Factorio engineers. As you might know, Factorio 2.1 Experimental released recently, and with it, several changes were made to the game, one of which was the removal of the Crusher Casino. Now, you might not know what that is, you might not care what that is, but we are in a period of the game where the devs are looking for balanced feedback from the community, and I'm here to give my piece. Let's start with some definitions so that we're all on the same page. The first definition, the reprocessing casino. The reprocessing casino, most of you knew as the space casino. It uses the asteroid reprocessing recipes, there are three, one for each asteroid type, in order to get higher quality asteroid chunks. It does this by using the 80% return rate inherent in the reprocessing recipe and combining that with the quality upgrade chance to upgrade the quality of the chunks that you put in it. We knew for a long time before 2.1 that this was going to be removed, and it has been removed. Next, the crushing casino. This is the one that's the main topic of this video. It uses the crushing recipe for asteroids, which returns not just chunks, but also output product. And when I say output product, what I mean is that, the 20 iron ore that we see in the recipe below. We didn't know that asteroid crushing was going to be nerfed in 2.1, but it was, in fact, surprise nerfed in 2.1. Next is the recycling casino. The recycling casino is basically what it sounds like. It's an asteroid recycling strategy, or upgrading strategy, you could say, that uses a recycler to accomplish the task. It also only returns chunks, and unlike the other two, it is completely unaffected by 2.1. So if you load up a save in 2.0 or one in 2.1, it will behave exactly the same. Finally, there is asteroid productivity research. Like its name might suggest, the higher you research it, the more the productivity of asteroid recipes, except reprocessing, increases. Before 2.1, that productivity increase affected the chunk return rates in the crushing recipes. After 2.1, chunks are now lossy catalysts and are unaffected by productivity bonuses. For the rest of this video, I will try to refer to this as APR because it's kind of a mouthful. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the release of Factorio 2.1 and the days preceding the release of Factorio 2.1. So, about 2 weeks before the release of 2.1 Experimental, we got Friday Fact number 442, and it added some cool stuff to the game, and it also contained the following line. I'm not going to read this paragraph. You can pause the video and read it yourself if you'd like, but it's basically the devs talking about the removal of the space casino. Like I said before, we all knew this was going to happen. It was only a matter of time, and they've outlined their reasoning for why the space casino was too powerful, right? I want to draw attention to the fact that they specifically call out asteroid reprocessing multiple times. Reprocess asteroids, right? This was very specifically targeted towards one recipe, the asteroid reprocessing recipe, in one form of casino. Okay, now we get to the actual Factorio 2.1 experimental release, and I, like many other players, am reading the patch notes, and it basically goes something like this. I see the first one, that they've increased the asteroid crushing asteroid chunk yield from 20% to 30%. I'm happy. This is a buff for asteroids, right? Seems good. But alarm bells are already starting to ring in the back of my head, going, at 4 times productivity, the max of 300%, won't this cause an infinite loop, a 120% return rate on asteroids? I see the next one. Very similarly, I'm happy. Oh, increased advanced asteroid crushing asteroid chunk yield from 5 to 10%. Cool. And then I see this one. Fixed asteroid chunks were not marked as lossy catalyst. This is the change that has completely disrupted and destroyed the crushing casino approach. And it's kind of annoying because the devs marked it as fixed it as if it was just a little thing in the game that was always a bug and that they didn't know about, which is obviously not the case, right? It existed in the game for a long time. Maybe they should have said changed asteroid chunks were not marked as lossy catalyst. But that's neither here nor there, right? After this change, some people, myself included, who were interested in the possibility of the crushing casino taking over the reprocessing casino's gap that was left behind, were trying to talk about this change and how it destroyed the crushing casino. And the community had what you could call a balanced debate about the crushing casino. Except debate is a generous word, because the actual conversations that were unfolding in all the various places, Reddits, Discords, YouTube comments, forum places, you name it, right, were not of a high quality, not of a high enough quality to really be called a debate, right? And so I wanted to make this video to solve this problem, to solve the fact that a lot of us don't really seem to know what exactly we're talking about, and therefore we can't have a valid good take about what should or should not be in the game, right? And the main thing that was missing from the entire conversation was the math. So let's start with some math. And in particular, we're going to start with hypothetical 2.1 math. What do I mean when I say hypothetical? I mean the hypothetical math where 2.1 did not touch either reprocessing or crushing casinos at all, right? So basically, the game is the same as it was in 2.0. There hasn't been a change, right? Look at this chart, right? This is a graph that's been made by a Python program that tries to calculate basically quality outputs from different types of approaches. One thing that immediately stands out to us, if we look at this for a sec, is that reprocessing, the yellow line, is far above any other approach until all the way around here, right? Which is what? Maybe level 27, 28 asteroid productivity research, APR is what I said I would call it. That's the problem, right? This is why this yellow line, reprocessing, had to go. Because from the very beginning of the game, almost till the very end of the game, it is far and away the strongest approach, and it's also a really easy approach, right? Now, there's some other stuff on this that might be confusing you. You'll see that there's 5 things here labeled with quality names, and then there's this pink one called trash all. What does that mean? Let's get into it. So, when you're using the crusher strategy, like I mentioned before, you are not just dealing with chunks, but you are also dealing with output product. In this example, our output product is iron ore, right? So I wanted to basically separate all of the different potential approaches to a crushing casino. Pink is representative of the strategy in which you throw away literally all the product you get, right? Even if it's legendary, I'm throwing it off. I don't want to deal with it. This blue one, as an example, shows where the lowest quality that I'm willing to start dealing with is blue iron ore, right? So maybe I'm taking the blue and the epic, the rare and the epic, I should say, to actually be sent through a recycler and turned into legendary, and I'm also taking the legendary just to store it and use it as one of the useful things that I'm looking for this thing to make, right? So that's what those labels mean. Now, the chart that we just looked at was pretty zoomed out. So let's look at one that's a little more zoomed in so that we can see a little more useful information. So this is the very start of the chart, right? If you look at the bottom here, we're at 0.0 asteroid prod research level. These fractional values don't really exist, right? They're just the space between different data points. So really this is where your attention should be. Notice how this yellow line is at more than 5 million legendary iron ore produced, whereas the greediest crushing strategy, where we are even willing to deal with common quality iron ore, is at less than 500k, right? This is the problem. This is why asteroid reprocessing had to be removed, because from the very beginning, it is 10 times better than the other approaches, despite the fact that it's way simpler, way less costly than them, right? And that's a problem. But okay, reprocessing we know is dead, so let's focus a little more on everything else. This is also a zoomed in version of the chart that we first looked at, but you can see that it's way less zoomed in on the x-axis. Now it goes from level 0 to about level 15 APR. It's the y value, the number of legendary ore produced, that I've capped. And notice, ironically, or maybe that's not the right word, but how everything seems to fit pretty neatly in this graph. We can actually see a lot of these lines, except reprocessing. Reprocessing is so incredibly better than everything else that it doesn't even appear on the graph at all when I change it to basically limit what we can see. So that's just more fuel to the fire of, yeah, reprocessing was OP and it had to go. There is some interesting information on this graph though, right? We can see that the lowly recycler strategy is actually outperforming the legendary crushing strategy, right? So where the only output product that we're willing to deal with from a crusher is legendary iron ore, it outperforms it until level 2 APR. And over here we can see that until level 10 APR, the recycler strategy actually produces more than the pink strategy, the simplest of all the crushing strategies, where we throw everything away, yes, even the legendary product that we get out of it. So that's interesting, right? There's actually some decision making to be made here depending on the levels of APR that you're at. These next two graphs, I don't have too much to say about them. This one represents the material amounts that you'll have to deal with depending on your strategy, so makes sense, right? If you're going to recycle common quality iron ore, you're going to be dealing with a lot of materials, versus if you're only ever going to touch epic and above, it's a lot less. And this chart is sort of the complement to the last one, or the inversion of it, where you can see that the ratio between what you are willing to process and how much legendary you get is much higher when you are more discriminatory with what you process, whereas down here, if you're processing literally everything, yeah, you're going to have to process thousands to get a single piece of legendary, right? Unlike the around 1 in 16 that Epic would give you. Okay, let's talk about the actual math of 2.1, where the main changes are reprocessing is gone, it's bye-bye, right? And crushing casinos have been changed to have a 30% return rate on the basic recipes, but that return rate is capped. The chunk is now a lossy catalyst. It will not be affected by any productivity that you put into the thing. This is what the math starts to look like instead. It's a bunch of straight lines, which makes sense, right? No longer is there this crazy effect of you get more asteroids, which are giving you more product, which, and then it turns into none of that. It's all gone, right? So we get these very straight lines, and we can see that some of the relationships that we saw in the past are gone now. Now, the worst of all the crushing strategies, where you throw away all output product, whether you're at level 0 or level 30, it's always worse than the recycler strategy. Additionally, all the other crusher strategies are always better than the recycling strategy. But I'd like to call attention to the way that they're better. This is at around 100k right here, and that's at around 500k. And because these aren't crazy weirdo lines, but very straight lines, that relative relationship between them is preserved even at the end. We can see that there's about a 5 times difference between them, right? That's important, and I want you to remember that. At the very beginning of the game, so APR 0, and at the very end, APR 30, the greediest crushing strategy is 5 times better than the recycler strategy. Okay, similarly, I have 2 more graphs. You can pause the video and look at them if you want to. These are the same 2 graphs that I didn't have a lot to say about before, but they're in here. Now these lines are really, really straight, right? Look at how straight that line is. Okay, that gets us to our balance thesis, which is probably why you wanted to watch this in the first place, right? We've collected a lot of data. Now we have to have a take on it, right? Well, here's my take. We've been talking a lot about how the output of various methods compares to the output of some other method, right? But Factorio is not just about outputs. We care much more about a ratio, the ratio between the cost we put in and the output we get out, right? If I show you a design and I say, these 10 EM plants can make 100 green circuits every second, and some other guy comes in, he's like, my design makes 110 green circuits a second. We don't go, wow, well, that's just a better design. We go, what does it take to build it? Is it also 10 EM plants? And if he's like, no, it's 642 assembler ones, he gets laughed out of the room, right? Because the cost of a thing matters more, or matters in addition to the output of the thing. So let's talk about cost and output in relation to casino strategies. This is what it actually looks like, right? In order to match the throughput of one recycler, which we can see is doing 32 asteroids a second over here, I need 28 times as many crushers, right? And this is actually being generous. 28 crushers is only 31.5 asteroids a second. It's actually less than what we need, but I'm a very generous guy, so I let it be like this. It's also 14 times as many quality modules, right? Which makes sense. There's 28 times 2 here, there's 1 times 4 here, it balances out to 28 over 2, 14 times as many quality modules. So, if we were to use our previous logic, we would immediately go, is this way of doing things 5 times cheaper than this way of doing things? Because if it is, I'd rather build 5 of these than 1 of these and get the same result out of both of them, right? Here's the actual recipe breakdown for the two of them. Keep in mind that what you see on the left, which already looks kind of expensive, right, is multiplied by 28. There is no way in hell that the left side is ever going to be even only 10 times as expensive as the other side. It's just not going to be. It's going to be more than that, and it would have to be as little as 5 times more expensive for it to actually be worth building in comparison. Now, you might be saying, oh, but you know, this is LDS right here, and I'm going to build quality LDS, I can use the LDS shuffle trick, right? Well, let's pretend that you live in a magic land where we can ignore literally all of these ingredients except for the plastic required in the LDS shuffle recipe. Guess what? It still takes 116 times as much plastic to build 28 of these as it does to build 1 of these, right? So this is not 5 times. This is not 20 times greater than 5 times. It's much more expensive than that, right? So what does that mean? It means that people will build crappy recycler ships and they'll just build a lot of them, right? That will be the new way that people will try to engage with asteroid quality in the new patch. So let's look at some of the common problems that people had with space casinos before 2.1. They said, oh, the problem with reprocessing is that it's the best right out the gate, and it outcompetes every other strategy, and it pushes all other quality strategies to the side, so nobody learns anything interesting about quality, and they just rely on this crutch. Well, that's true, and reprocessing is gone now. But now we're in a situation where we've removed the Crusher Casino. Why? I don't know. It didn't have the same problem as the reprocessing one, right? It kind of sucks in the early game. The whole point is that until you put levels into APR, it's not very good at making you quality things, right? So it didn't really solve this problem of helping to push asteroid quality out or push it really far to the late game, right? That was already solved just by having Crusher Casinos in. Now that's gone, right? It didn't solve the other problem that people have, which is, oh, a space casino is self-reproducing. You make one space casino, it makes another, it makes another, it makes another, right? Because whether I'm using an asteroid crusher as the machine that is doing my quality cycling or a recycler, the reality is that everything I need to make either one of those, I can get from what the space casino can make. So that problem, not addressed at all. It didn't make space casinos consume resources from your base. This is another problem that people have. They say, oh, when I do another quality approach on the planet Vulcanus, maybe I'm cycling, blue circuits, or even if I'm doing LDS shenanigans, right? It costs some amount of flow of molten iron and molten copper. It costs some amount of sulfuric acid. It costs something. I'm diverting resources from my base. It gives me this impetus to expand. When I make stuff in space, that doesn't exist because I'm just consuming these asteroids that are infinite, and the only thing you could say I'm taking more of for my base is maybe, the nuclear or fusion power cells that are powering whatever reactors on my ship. Well, This problem is similarly still not addressed by what we're doing here, right? And the final and probably most pervasive critique of the Space Casino that people have is they say, well, the Space Casino is simple. It's really, really simple. It's too simple. Well, the Recycler Casino, which is the one that people will now make because of what they've done to the Crusher Casino, it's way simpler. It's way, way simpler. So, if we failed to accomplish all of these things with this change, it begs the question, what did the change do? What was the actual effect of the change? Well, let's think about it. We killed quality space science strategies, right? All the mega basers and all the people who were doing interesting things with trying to make space science with basically quality upgraded asteroids as a way of either combating, you know, some of the throughput issues of the old landing pad, or just because sometimes it actually was legitimately more UPS efficient to spend some time upgrading the quality of this thing because it was just so good. That's all dead now. All of that is gone, right? Okay, what else? Well, it prevented players from having easy access to quality basic resources. That kind of sounds good, right? Like, why would we want them to have easy access to quality basic resources? Oh, it's that last part. In the late game, right? So, in the late game is when you can get to that productivity level where you can do the LDS shuffle. In the late game is when you can get to that level where you can do the blue chip shuffling. In the late game is the time when you actually should start to have easier access to quality basic resources. And now, that part of the asteroid casino stuff is sort of being ripped away. There isn't this really cool, almost exponential scaling from the asteroids not being a lossy catalyst. That's been removed. Next thing, it broke ship designs that relied on higher asteroid product throughput resulting from non-lossy chunks. This is something that I already know a lot of people will go, hey, whenever we have a major release, and especially because they're playing on an experimental release, the devs are going to break things in old patches, and you wouldn't want them to not do that because it might mean that there are things that they leave out of the game that should be in the game because they're afraid of messing up people's old saves. I agree wholeheartedly. That is a true statement. However, there's a caveat to it, right? Which is that we are okay with the devs making things that are incompatible with old saves in order for them to deliver to us a feature worth having, right? If the devs were like, we are changing the spoil timer on fish to be 10 seconds faster, and so any save that has fish on it is bricked. You can't load it up, it's gone. The community would not be like, well, you know, it's a major update, we're just going to have to accept that. They would go, hi, this is a really stupid change, because yes, you're allowed to break my old save, but what for, you know? And for changing the spoil time of fish by 10 seconds is not a good enough reason for you to break an old save and break an old design. And in this case, I would say this change to the Crusher Casino that no one was asking for is not a good reason to go and do something as crazy as messing with ships that were completely unrelated to this idea of quality cycling an asteroid, right? And my final critique, which I kind of already mentioned, is that it made the asteroid quality strategies take less brain power. And I have an example image for you of what a recycler ship looks like. Think of the dumbest, simplest reprocessing casino that you've ever seen. Is it dumber than this? It's not. This is nothing, right? This is a recycler that I have surrounded with inserters, and it just puts chunks in, and if I get a good one, it filters it out, right? The way that I would update this is that I would change the filters on the splitters and on the inserters to match whatever the quality level I'm seeking is, right? And I would upgrade the quality of the recycler and the quality modules. That's it. Can you believe that one of these recyclers at Legendary has the throughput of 28 crushers? Can you imagine how simple the ship designs are going to get if this is the best way to be doing quality upcycling of asteroids? This is the problem, right? If this is the result of the change that we made, then there was a mistake. Somewhere along the way, we have lost our way and we have done something incorrect. So this is my conclusion, right? clearly crushing cannot totally be compared with reprocessing. It lacks a lot of the problems that reprocessing had, which is that it was too strong in the early game and it made too simple of designs, right? Crushing is better on both those regards. It takes more investment, it takes more complexity to solve, and case in point, we are in 2.1 experimental. There is no better time right now than to let players use asteroid crushing casinos and actually come to a well-reasoned, well-experimented conclusion that they are too strong and they must be removed from the game. But if we do the opposite, if we ban them before anyone even knows how strong they are, just because we are still having flashbacks to how bad the reprocessing casino was, we'll never know, right? We'll literally never know how good it was, how good it could have been, how bad it might have been. We'll never know, right? So this is the time to make the decision. Bring back the crushing casino. Let people play with it in 2.1 experimental. Let them come to their own conclusions and beliefs. Let them figure out. That's my take. I hope you enjoyed the video. That's all.